Coffee Monday is more than a podcast. It's a movement to reshape the way we approach Mondays and the week ahead. It's about embracing the reality that work doesn't have to dominate our lives. It's about finding that sweet spot where passion, purpose, and a cup of motivation connect. Filmed and recorded in California's Central Valley, join me, your host, Rae Pardini Matson, as I invite thriving professionals to share their stories of how they're crafting a life that's both vibrant and balanced. This week on Coffee Monday, we're sitting down with Krystal Kitahara, owner and CEO of Yummi Karma, the pioneering cannabis brand making waves with wellness-focused tinctures and skincare. What started as a solution to help her mom sleep turned into California's first line of cannabis tinctures designed for specific wellness needs, from high-dose drops to microdose formulas and the cannabis-powered skincare line High Gorgeous. Krystal and her sister Chelsea have built a powerhouse brand rooted in innovation, intention, and a whole lot of passion. In this episode, we dive into the journey of launching Yummi Karma, working alongside family, and carving out a niche in the cannabis industry. Plus, we're talking sleep, self-care, and what's next for this growing brand. Grab your coffee and let's get into it. So, Krystal, I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you for being on Coffee Monday.
I'm honored to be here.
Oh, it's fun. Marcy connected us, and you've shared a little about your story with me, but I look forward to expanding on it today. So, first thing, tell me about your connection to the Central Valley, because most all of our guests have some sort of a connection.
Well, we have a deep connection to Central Valley. My sister and I were both not born here, but raised here our entire life. Both sides of our family go far back and in agriculture, which a lot of people know being here. And then I kind of boomeranged a few times and then returned to go to Fresno State to finish in business entrepreneurship.
Oh, awesome.
And then started the company here, actually. Most people are really surprised. Just, it's not really known for a cannabis area. So... And
when was that? When did you start it?
Let's see. I started this in 2014.
2014.
Yeah.
Wow. So a little over 10 years.
Yeah, we're celebrating 10 years.
Yeah.
It's crazy to look back at. So
that's awesome.
I was working here and we were actually growing on the side. My sister and I's little side project.
I love it.
And then our father found out and said that we had to go get real jobs. So he said, if you still want to come back and do this in a year, I'll be more open to it. But please go get a job with that degree you just got. So
right. Okay. So you graduated from Fresno State.
I did. Yeah.
And you studied entrepreneurship. That's a great program.
Honestly, the Lao School of Business was amazing. I still have connections with people from there. It's a great school.
I've heard that. My younger sister did the same thing, and she did the mentorship program.
I did the mentorship program.
Same. She keeps in touch with her mentors and just had a really great experience.
It was more hands-on, which was a lot more different, I think, than other approaches where it's all classroom. They really believed in getting us out, seeing behind the scenes. We did a lot of tours of businesses. We got different business owners to come in and share their experience. I absolutely loved it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, it sounds like obviously you studied it, but you have an entrepreneurial spirit to you. You kind of started doing your side hustle before you even thought to get a job, right? I mean, that's what I'm gathering.
Well, my sister is probably going to not want me to share this part, but our first business was the Cleaner Sisters with a K, so that it went with her last name.
Yeah.
And it was a tent in the living room where we had a sign on the outside of the tent. So we'll vacuum a room for $1.
Oh, stop it.
But my dad was listening one day and he would hear me. He'd put in an order for 3 rooms. And I'd be like, okay, you get 30 cents, 10 cents per room to go vacuum. And I'd pocket the 90. And that's when he said he knew that, that or selling stuff on the side of the road.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. So I actually started Yummi Karma. The name came from a business that I started while at Fresno State under a whole different business model.
Let's hear it. I want to know that story because I was going to ask where the name came from. I love the branding. I love the name. I want to get into that.
Okay. So when you go through that program, they encourage you to start an actual business or write a business plan. And of course, I wanted to start an actual business. And at the time, 10 years ago, there wasn't a lot of healthy options for beverages. This was when, Monster and all of those were
Yeah.
really popular. So I kind of looked at the campus and said, okay, there's soda, there's energy drinks, and really coffee and beer. So,
Yeah. The essentials.
but there was no fresh juice. And I grew up with my grandmother juicing orange juice for us in the morning and stuff. And
Amazing.
I thought, well, that's crazy. People should have access. And so I created a system where on Sundays I did a deal with an organic farm. I would go out and pick the oranges.
Oh my
So it was
gosh.
cheaper.
Yeah.
And then I would juice them. I bought a juicer and a cart that you like plug in. And so I welded a cash box to the cart, and it was an honor system, much like they do in smaller, like Norwegian,
Yeah.
those type of countries.
Yeah.
So I would put the orange juice in roll the cart out, put the orange juice in it in the morning, and put a sign up. So it was $2 for a small one and $3 for a large one. And people would put their money in the box, and I kind of went off the honors because kids are always worried about what other people think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Barely anybody stole, and I made like $100 a day. So the Yummi Karma part came
love
from.
that.
Originally, I was like, okay, I'm gonna put a Jesus above the cart statue.
He's watching.
so that people really won't steal. And my friend was like, that might be a little too much.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I'm half Japanese. Why don't we put a Buddha, right? Karma. And so that came out as Yummi Karma.
So the
Buddha on
name,
top. Yeah.
the name of the cart was Yummi Karma.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And because I had
love it.
already, and then I got into it with like the city and the health department, and they were like, your cart's too far away from the kitchen, and da da da. And they came and they confiscated all my orange juice one day, and I told myself, I've learned a lesson. I will not do anything that's like regulated with food. And here we are today. I'm doing regulated cannabis products, which is even more.
I would probably think even more regulated, right? Like even more sort of like red tape to go through, I would think.
It's a lot of
I
it.
bet.
It's been since 2016 when it went legal.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
it's
that's
changed
what
a
I was
lot.
going to ask that. It went legal in 2016 in the state of California.
Yeah, well, they voted
just-
for it.
yeah.
And then it took about maybe a year and a half for cities to really come online. So the way they structured it was in the control of each city. And so you didn't really, even though the state allowed it, you didn't have like a framework to work with. So you really had to go and look at different cities and see what licenses they were going to offer. So one option we were looking at was Santa Cruz. I forget how many different types of licenses there are, maybe like 13, but
I know. Wow.
yeah.
How did
So
you
have-
even know to like know that? Look for that.
So to go backwards, when
Yeah.
we jumped into cannabis, I was selling,
Yeah.
donating
Yeah.
my excess cannabis
Yes.
when it was medical.
Uh-huh.
And it would take me out to different areas like Bakersfield or Los Angeles.
Okay.
And so if we had excess from what we weren't using ourselves,
Yeah.
we would go donate that
Yeah.
for a price.
Yeah.
It was all lingo back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was
Yeah.
totally legal. We had the cops show up one day, walk through the house, and they're like, oh, you have all your cards
You're
on the wall.
fine.
You're good.
Yeah.
So what it did is it took us out to stores and areas that were much further along. So by then in Los Angeles and parts of like the Bay Area, like Berkeley, they were way ahead. And so you'd walk in and you'd see finished goods on the shelf. It wasn't just purchasing flour. I'll say Bakersfield was a little bit more behind, and people were still selling brownies in cellophane. And I thought
Funny. Yeah.
I wouldn't buy that.
Yeah.
As a woman, I was like, this is suspect.
Yeah.
But then I went to LA, and one day I saw, and it changed everything, was a Bang chocolate bar. And it looked like something you'd buy at Trader Joe's. And I thought, if the industry is going to move forward, this is how it's going to happen. 'Cause
Wow.
you have to normalize it. Right? You can't be called a pot dealer forever, and like society would not accept that.
I
And
just
so,
feel like you're so progressive in that thinking, though,
I
because to
mean,
your point, like the whole concept for those that aren't familiar or as forward thinking as you would think it's almost a bit taboo, right?
oh,
Like,
my sister definitely says I live off in the future. She has to pull me back down. She's the
yeah,
grounded one.
which is great. You guys have each other because that's important in
Right.
business, right?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's really forward thinking because, yeah, I don't know. I just find that fascinating.
I was a risk taker more.
Yeah.
I notice it not as much as I age.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little more cautious now, even with how I drive.
Yeah.
But yeah, so seeing that is when I kind of came back and told our father, like, I think there's something here.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually went with us to Colorado where it had legalized,
Right.
and saw all the opportunity
Mm-hmm.
and what they were doing there. And that's at that point he said, okay, if you really want to do this, like, I'll help.
Support you.
Well, he
yeah.
said, you can either have your inheritance in the future or a smaller amount, much smaller, now. What
Yeah.
do you want to do? And my sister said, I'm going to wait. And I said, I want it now. Like, and we ended up getting a place here off the 99,
Mm-hmm.
an area that was questionable,
Yeah.
and started making products, dabbling. And
So making products there.
yeah,
Okay.
we made,
What'd you make? Yeah.
I mean, some of our first products were infused hot sauce and barbecue sauce and salad dressing.
How were those? Did they taste good?
Yeah, I mean,
Hot
I'll
sauce
be
is
the
a good
first one
idea.
to tell you this was prior to most people using a lab, so I don't know how much weed actually was in it because we
Yeah.
didn't really know what we were doing
Yeah.
at all. I had a few failures where I would sell it to the stores and they were like, "We're not getting high." I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, okay. Let me let me try again.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was really fun as an entrepreneur to just be creative and be able to print your own labels and throw it on a shelf with no regulations back then.
Yeah.
During this time period, it was the Wild West, they said. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a little scary to think, but I would say something that was cool is we were very self-regulated.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what something is always frustrating as you get older and you see all the rules and
Yeah.
and I would always tell all the city and state officials, like, you don't understand, because they'd say, well, if you make something and we don't test it and we don't oversee everything,
Yeah.
what if something happens? And I'm like, then you go out of business. Like, you
Right. Like
literally-
that's the next
like
thing.
that's the natural consequence if we
Yes.
get someone sick or we don't hit the potency or we hit too
Yes.
high of a potency.
Yeah.
So
So you were, what would you say, all of a 99 for how long?
maybe at least a year. Yeah, because if we started in 2014, we did start in the house. And then we got it maybe 2015,
Yeah.
a warehouse, and we built out our own kitchen there.
Amazing.
We got ran out of town in like 2017 probably, so maybe like 2 years. And we built up like a really good base. We actually hit it off with making infused potato chips.
Yum.
Got the eye of a woman who actually was the one that was the maker of Bang chocolate. So
Shut
the
up. Full
person
circle.
that-
I got the chills. That's
It's-
crazy.
It's insane. My sister and I attended a conference that was only open to women in Colorado.
cool.
And we're walking around there. It was about 120 women from all over the country that were getting into cannabis. And I see this woman walk by with her sister, and they're wearing these poofy white, because it's freezing. We're up by like Vail.
Yeah.
They're wearing poofy white vests, and it says Bang. And I was like, oh my gosh, Chelsea, look.
Yeah.
That's the Bang sisters. And I was
legs.
starstruck.
Yeah.
And got up the nerve before the end of the weekend to get like her information, and they were so nice. And about a year later is when she reached out to us and said, hey, like, I'd love to have a conversation with you.
No
And
way.
She lived in Orange County, and we drove down there and had a meeting. And at the end of the meeting, she was like, I'd love to bring you on the truck and be your distributor. At the time, shouldn't say this, but we were sending stuff through different means of
Yeah.
transportation.
Yeah.
But this was a big deal to get our first
Yes.
signed with a
That's
distributor.
true. Yeah.
And we actually grew to 500. We were distributing to 500 stores at that time.
Wow.
And then
All over where? Like California?
all over California.
Yeah.
And at the time before, I had been doing a lot of the deliveries, our whole team was, and it was slightly frightening. Like you'd be driving up to Eureka.
Oh, I bet.
It's
Yeah.
9, 10 o'clock at night down these dirt roads.
Yeah, no.
And luckily nothing ever happened, but I did start to worry about the safety of my team, especially since we were at the time all women.
Yeah.
And so it seemed like a much safer option to also go with someone who's a professional at this.
I also feel like, too, that's a good lesson for those that are considering growing their business or, seeking other means for scaling, distributing, etc. That it's not like you got to be patient. Like you said, a year after you met her, them is when you started the I mean, that's like, wow.
Oh, you have to be really patient. I
Right?
thought I'd be on an island by now, retired. That's not the case.
But you're dreaming big.
Yeah.
You're
definitely.
dreaming big.
Yeah.
So here's the deal. The date for Mom's Time Out this year has changed because let's be real, as moms, we have the right to change our minds too, right? So mark your calendars for Wednesday, May 7th. Yes, I said Wednesday. Why the change? Because we want to give you your Mother's Day weekend back, a chance to spend time with loved ones. But don't worry, this midweek celebration is going to be just as fabulous, if not more so. So stay tuned because in the coming weeks, we'll be spilling all of the details on the exciting changes and fun surprises we have planned. To the girls in my hometown, you're not going to want to miss this. So mark your calendars for May 7th and we'll see you there. Visit @MumsyMedia on Instagram for more details.
If you're like me, your day doesn't truly start until you've had that first cup of coffee. Dutch Bros coffee, that is. From their signature cold brews and nitro-infused delights to their classic lattes and frothy brevets, Dutch Bros has something for every coffee lover. And if you're not into coffee, no problem. They've got Rebel energy drinks, teas, sodas, and even some great kid-friendly options for the whole family to enjoy. I know I love going through the drive-thru with my kids. They love getting their kids' Dutch cups, and it's a win-win for everyone. But Dutch Bros isn't just great about their drinks. They're very involved in their community. Every visit feels like catching up with a friend who knows your order and remembers your name. So next time you're looking for a little pick-me-up, I highly recommend swinging by your local Dutch Bros coffee, and you can follow along online at Dutch Bros Fresno on Instagram. The beautiful floral centerpiece you see on our shows is styled by floral artist Darcy Hovsepian of DH Floral, and the flowers themselves are actually grown and sourced from local flower farms right here in our Central Valley, thanks to the creation of the San Joaquin Flower Collective. As the first and only source for 100% locally grown flowers in the valley, the San Joaquin Flower Collective's biggest mission is to reduce the need for imported flowers for flower growers and lovers alike. By streamlining the ordering process with an online shopping experience, prioritizing collaboration over competition, and raising awareness for our local flower movement through weekly flower pop-ups on Wednesdays from 10 to 12, they're changing the way farm-grown flowers are bought and sold in the valley. As a wholesaler, a retailer, or just a flower lover, you can follow along at SJ Flower Collective on Instagram for their latest happenings and info on their weekly Wednesday Fresh Bloom pop-ups. Wow. Okay. So they ended up being your distributor.
Yeah. So we were already then at that time looking. This is about when it had become legal, but like I said, just because it was legal, there was no framework yet. So for about a year and a half, you were kind of still working in a gray area, right? So they said it's legal, but there's no rules.
Yeah.
So like when you're driving between counties to deliver, if you go through a county that it was anti-cannabis and they pulled you over, you would go to jail.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
then you could go into LA, and then they wouldn't do anything. So
Yeah.
it was very confusing. You had to be very careful.
I bet.
And then you also had to deal with things that happen in a traditional market, which is the black market, getting robbed and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
bet.
because we knew we wanted to be closer to the distributor, we were already looking at moving and relocating, which made it nice because we had pretty much picked out a new piece, like a building, and we were
Great.
going to move. And then, I don't know, somehow word got out and Fresno PD showed up at our facility in Fresno in the helicopter, and
Oh, no.
they were like, "You're gonna go to jail." And then it ended up, we were able to negotiate out of that, and we left with that day. We literally
Wow.
packed up a semi truck and
Yeah.
moved.
Bounced.
Never looked back. So we moved
Yeah.
a little earlier than we planned.
Expected, yeah.
But I was ready to go to jail for it. That's the crazy thing. In my mind,
Wow.
we were advocates, and we knew we were fighting for something that we believed in. And a lot of what was happening was changing the system was through jury nullification. So it was people getting arrested,
Okay.
going to trial, and the jury saying, yeah, I'm not sending this person, this man who was growing for his wife who had cancer. I'm not doing that. That's what really started to change a lot of it. And so I knew there was always a chance that I'd get arrested. But I also thought, what are they going to do? They're going to do where they do the press, or, they have the press come. They usually put the guns and the money. I'm like, what are they going to put, like, my 500 sparkly bubble bath on the table and be like, we caught her, So
Right.
I was like,
It's their
we're gonna
worst
take a chance,
things.
right?
Exactly.
Because all the products we were making were very, they were approachable.
They were approachable and they were like, they're for a positive,
Right. So I was like, arrest me, you know? And then I think that takes the fun out of it for them.
That's hilarious.
And they were looking for stuff that was a felony, and obviously we didn't have any of that. I think we kind of surprised them when they saw
Clearly
what we look like.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. And where you were, right? They're like, what's happening here?
Yeah, we definitely didn't fit the normal mold. There was a lot of times going into stores, people would ask me if I was a narc or undercover instead.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So then, we moved, and we were in a temporary location, and then we ended up submitting with the city of Costa Mesa. And we were maybe like 12th to submit our application, but
Wow.
I like to say that we didn't use consultants. We did it all with our team.
Amazing.
And went through the process, and we ended up being the first licensed manufacturer in Orange County.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So, bragging
huge.
rights. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Now, the problem with being first back in the day is you could only work with licensed stores. And had we known that, we probably wouldn't have been
The first.
done it so quickly.
Yeah.
Because we looked at the list of how many people we could sell to. There was like 60 stores.
Yeah.
So we had to start all over again.
Yeah.
So it was a building process. And
bet.
to answer your question, since I went all the way around,
Yeah.
we only had a manufacturing license. At the very beginning, that's all you could have. Then as we were building out, they said, oh, you can do distro too. And in order to do your own testing and to hold your own product, you have to have a distro license. So we didn't have one for the first 5 years.
Okay.
And so we went back to the city, flipped our offices into distro so that we had more control. So we have a manufacturing facility and then a distribution right next door.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Still in the same area.
Yes, we've been in Costa Mesa for 7-8 years.
Yeah. Wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
So who do you sell to? Other people that sell cannabis? Do you sell online? Is that legal? How does that work?
We wish we could sell online.
I know, right?
You can't do
You
direct to
can't.
consumer unless you have every license along the way.
Uh,
And so there are people who are vertically integrated. They
Yeah.
grow and they manufacture and they have retail. It has been a very big struggle for those people. It
how
hasn't-
so or why? I'm just
hasn't
curious.
gone
I'm
well.
fascinated by
I
this.
think the industry's so young, and they always say, most companies do well when they do one thing and do it well.
I hear that.
And a lot of these companies, when it became legal, big money came in. We're talking now public companies, and they bought up. Okay, I'm going to buy up cultivation. I'm going to buy manufacturing, everything through retail. When you try to oversee something that large with thousands of employees, and you haven't had the time, I think, to build the structure or your processes, it
Right.
just
It's
becomes
just
a nightmare.
nightmare.
And we've worked with a lot of companies that went through that. It's just the turnover and the lack of being efficient, right? So you kind of need to build on stuff.
Makes sense. And that's a smart way to approach business too. Because we've worked with clients on the PR side of things where they're like, we want to blow this thing up. We want to do a huge splash, all the things for a relatively new product. We do that. And then they don't have the means to sustain the orders
Right.
or support on customer service. And then that is a true
growth
PR
can kill you.
nightmare. Yes.
It's very expensive too, the
Yes.
payroll. I mean, I think people
Yeah.
are surprised how much money it goes to just keep the lights on.
I bet. I know. Well, you, as running a business, you understand that, right?
Oh yeah, and I tend to learn the hard way. My sister usually is the one that's like, "We shouldn't do that,"
Yeah.
and I'm like, "But what if we did?" And
Sounds
then-
like you guys complement each other really well.
Oh,
So
yes. Yeah.
you're CEO, she's COO or CFO,
yeah.
excuse me. So is it like more traditional where you're like the big dreamer, the creative, and she's the like, okay, let's bring you back down to reality sort of? Yeah.
absolutely.
I think that's a really great dynamic.
Yes, I
Yeah.
will say at the beginning, I was probably, I'm older, 6.5 years. And I think I
Okay.
threw that around a little bit.
Yeah.
Had to learn the hard way, swallow my pride on some massive mistakes that I've made.
Yeah.
That she likes to remind me about anytime I'm about to go do it again. But without her, we wouldn't be where we are today.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, if you don't mind sharing an example of one of those mistakes, because I do feel like failure helps you learn, helps you grow, helps you improve, right? And I feel like that's really relatable for people because sometimes people get discouraged by all of the opportunity or all of the failure in, maybe challenges with regulations or liability or staffing or turnover. The list goes on, and then
Yeah.
they give up, right? It's
Yes.
easy to be like, this is too hard, I can't. But
Yeah.
you can also prevail and learn from it, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
I would say one of the biggest we made right off the bat. Well, sometimes it's with product. I've done it twice.
Okay.
Usually not fully understanding how it would be made all the way finished to the store. So when I said we did chips back in the day, we could do that because it wasn't regulated as much. They weren't tested.
Yeah.
Then they rolled it out where you had to hit within 10%. It's a 10% variance. It's very hard to do if you're not doing a homogenized product like a lotion or something where you can control that. So chips are of all different sizes.
Yes.
But I was like, we'll figure it out. We're going to get it. We're just going to do, and you had to have serving sizes back then. So
yeah.
if we wanted to do 70 milligrams, we had to have 7 little bags of chips in one big bag. And I was like, oh, let's just do that.
Yeah.
So we got all of our packaging in. I think it was like 4 or 5 pallets, right? And we hadn't even seen the bags yet. And we go to like even open the child resistant. They didn't come opened. So they
Oh,
were all
God.
child resistant. Couldn't even figure out how to open the bags. Finally, when we did, it took forever.
Yeah.
Then making all the little bags and we're sealing them. We did 1 or 2 days of production and made maybe a couple hundred bags.
Yeah.
Whereas we used to be able to do like 2,000 in a day. And I
Yeah,
just
wow.
looked at it and was like, this is never
is
going to
not-
work. So
yeah.
the one good thing I am capable of is, so I was like,
Cut
call
it.
the dumpster. And we threw $26,000 worth of
Oh,
packaging away.
damn.
And for the environmentalists, I'm sorry about that because it was plastic and I
Yeah.
felt terrible.
Yeah.
But now I try to keep people to not use plastic bags at the grocery store.
There you go.
6,000 times.
Yeah. Full circle.
But that was one.
But see, that's a good
where
example, right?
had I-
Where
we should have tested the process of it because we were so good at it before. A few tweaks later, no, it doesn't.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I did it again with a product I really wanted to launch, and we used a co-packer, and I also learned that we have a very high standard at our company. If we ever hear someone say like that's fine, we kick
that's
them
not,
out.
yeah, that's not
Fine
fine.
is
Yeah,
not
fine
good.
is not good enough.
And so we've also learned not to work with other so far, just different people to co-pack. If we don't make it ourselves and have controls over it, we don't produce it.
And that's a live and learn thing, right?
Right.
You've had to live that. and learn that through those relationships to know, it just maybe doesn't work for our business model or how we
always
want to do
sounds good.
business. And right. So how did you get to the place of tinctures? Because you're talking about chips, you're talking
Yeah.
about the whole like beginning stages of when people did brownies. Like
Yeah.
there's so many different avenues you can go in cannabis. How did you decide that or how did you get to this sort of lane?
So it's actually interesting because we created our first tincture not even to sell. Our mom was on sleep medication
Yeah.
like 10 years ago.
A lot of people are.
And the side effects were slightly alarming. And so
Yeah.
we asked her, would you ever be open to cannabis? And at that point, she finally came out and said, yeah, I have a bong in the attic. And then we thought back and we're like, wait, so you always smoked? And she's like, yeah. And Chelsea and I were like, oh, this makes so much more sense. Those weird snacks you used to eat were, like now I'm realizing why my mom, she was high sometimes. And so once we knew that, we ended up actually working with an herbalist at a store that I wish I could remember perfectly. I think maybe it's on Herndon or there's like a herbal store. I don't know
Okay,
if it's
so in
still there.
town. Cool. Yeah.
So we went in and this woman helped walk us through all the different herbs that would help with sleep. And so we picked chamomile, lavender, and then magnesium.
Mm-hmm.
But and mixed that with cannabis oil and produced the first tincture for our mom. And she started using it and went off sleep meds and completely went off sleep meds.
Wow.
To this day. So we thought, wow, that's really cool. So we created a couple more. One for PMS. So we used different herbs that were helping to alleviate those symptoms. We had one that was called Love Potion. We brought that one back recently. It's an aphrodisiac.
I love it.
And
How
we
cool.
had one for the daytime. So with like B12.
Mm-hmm.
And we were so excited.
Yeah.
Put cute little colorful labels on it. Took it to market. And the buyers were like, what is this? This isn't sexy. Like, it's not fun. Because it was such a wellness approach. And people were buying brownies, chocolate.
Yeah.
Chocolate was the number one seller then.
Huh.
And so it was discouraging because we're like, yeah, but this is really important. And so, we kept them on the menu and we sold a few here, a few there. But it really took a lot of education. We also were introducing CBD into our products. And at that time, nobody knew what it was. So
again, kind of a trailblazer for
the
industry.
So buyers would be like,
Yeah.
well, why do I want CBD? It doesn't.
So
teach you
while
why.
while you're selling these, like not as frequently as maybe you would have liked to start, what else was like keeping the business afloat?
Oh, it was definitely our chips because that was still the time. when
Still
we
the
could sell
chips.
them.
Oh
Yeah.
wow. Okay.
So it wasn't until we went and got our moved into the licensed facility and we really had to change the products that we were making. And I thought some other factors that we wanted to address was the money coming in. So
Yeah.
at this point, 2017, 18, a lot of money entered our industry. I'm talking massive.
Oh, I'm
Some
sure.
companies raised 100, 300, 500 million dollars.
I believe it.
And we knew that we were either going to have to take an investment and lose control,
Yeah.
or stay small and find a niche. So, or niche, depending on how people say it.
Yeah.
So, we wanted to stay small. I was like, we loved what we did. We enjoyed being creative, and I thought there's a lot more than just making money. There's also a freedom and being able to have some,
For
wake up
sure.
and do what you love.
Right.
So we looked at all the different products on the market. Vape was out, certain things that just you couldn't compete with.
What
Somebody.
about gummies? Like when did gummies
So that,
enter
like-
the scene?
They've always been around, but it
Yeah.
really blew up probably about that time.
Yeah.
And we were thinking about doing gummies, but it was kind of the same thing where some of these companies just, it would have been very hard to compete with. I think maybe if we would have done it, there's a good chance you could still enter the gummy market now.
Right.
But holding your price So to go back and say, like, we're from farming families.
Mm-hmm.
We know what it looks like to sell a commodity and not having control over a price point. Now, gummies, you can still brand and you can control that a bit. But what we saw is in wellness products like tinctures and topicals, they tend to hold their price point because they're a little bit more difficult to make. They're a little more unique. And so the gummy market at one point dropped, and you're lucky to make 20, like very, very small profit margin.
Yeah.
You have to
I
sell
could see that.
a lot of gummies. So
Yeah.
that went back to the same problem. We have a small team. So that's when we were like, okay, tinctures had started to really do well actually for us, and we were catching up. We went from like top 50 to top 10, top 5, and now we always stay competitive in the top 3.
Amazing.
And we've tried to make them like sexy.
You've done a beautiful job with the branding and the colors and the names. I mean, everything. I love it.
Oh, thank you. They've gone through, it's kind of a joke in our industry. We've been doing this a long time. So some of my buyers will be like, when we did this latest revision, maybe 3 years ago, they're like, "You're not changing it again after this, though, right?" Because I always have to change all my pictures on my website.
Or that,
You always update it every year or two. Be like, "Oh, now we want it to look like this."
Yeah.
Now I have to tell them, "No, we're not changing it."
No, we're not changing it. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's something about, we like the education of it. We like that we combine it with herbs. We like even the way that it's taken. It's it's much quicker. It hits within like 15 minutes. It's easy to dose, but it's also the people we target. So the women, and elderly.
Yeah. Right. Is that mainly your demo?
A lot of women.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people who are looking for something to help alleviate a pain, whether it's sleep, physical pain.
PMS. Yeah, I feel like sleep and PMS are probably up there pretty high, right? What about like anxiety? You said you had a daytime one?
That's the other one. So anxiety is it's like right behind people who are looking for sleep.
What about, because I do feel like, and just from perception, okay, not really fully, I'm learning a lot about the cannabis industry. This is fun. But not knowing all the logistics of it, the medical sort of approach to cannabis, I feel like really kind of made its way through those that were going through like cancer treatment. Is that safe to say?
Yes.
So do any of your tinctures or any of your products, do you feel like that serves a sort of a medicinal purpose, or is that different? I don't know.
Absolutely. We're always known as medicinal. Even though I tried to like sell us as recreational, they're like, no, you're a wellness product.
Which I love that for you. Like,
Right.
I think that's so great. And I feel
we
like,
fully embrace it.
Yes.
But you can imagine somebody who was a full-blown stoner at one point that was like, no, but people will take this for fun.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, we're putting you in the wellness section.
Yeah.
So,
But how about they probably
and
are
it's hot
doing this
candy
for
flavored.
fun? Yeah.
They didn't care.
Yeah.
No, that's been a huge thing for us. We have worked with so many people over the years, and that's what led to the development of a lot of different tinctures that we make now. We have different ratios. We have different cannabinoids. It's mostly been feedback. I even most recently worked with a mother whose 13-year-old daughter is autistic and she has a card. So medically, she can take this.
Yes.
But she was really struggling with outbursts, and we got her on a really good mix of a certain cannabinoid ratio and realized it was very helpful. And so having her call crying and thanking our team, it's things like that keeps us going. We've had a lot of customers who have told us that like end of life, they've had a lot of relief from some of these. And so, while we have a lot of fun and we know that people use our products just to recreationally enjoy themselves, we realize that we're making a difference, and it's a great alternative to what's out there. We're living in a big pharma time.
Totally. Yeah.
And we look at this as much more like Eastern medicine. It's all plant-based, right? So,
Which I do feel like, because we're similar ages, I feel like our generation is really leaning into the more holistic approach.
Yeah.
I feel.
yeah.
And maybe that's just
I mean, there's
me.
a lot of options now where I'm like, is that holistic or
Truth. Yeah, right. I know, define holistic. But I just think, thinking outside the box of traditional options, I guess.
Right.
And this obviously being one of them. So you mentioned too that your tinctures, there's different like levels of dosage. I don't know if that's a proper
Yes.
term. So some are like higher potency than others, or am I using the right terms?
Yeah. So there's just two sitting here.
Yeah.
The one on the right is actually our number one seller.
Which one? The
Lights Out.
lights out.
Yeah, that's now the one our mom uses.
love
It's a stronger version of our original sleep tincture.
Okay. So you have different
That's
levels.
for people with a high tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't take it.
Yeah.
So
High tolerance for cannabis,
Cannabis,
right?
yes.
Just because, I mean, I have literally a handful of friends that take sleep medication.
okay, and usually
They probably would need to start small, or what do you?
Yeah, so we have 4 sleep tinctures. The first one's the one on the
Mm-hmm.
left, Beauty Sleep. That one's a CBD only. So that
Okay.
doesn't have any THC in it.
Hmm.
Some people find it effective. We've used other herbs in there like passion flower to help.
Mm-hmm.
But it's mostly just to get people introduced. And
Yeah.
tinctures does that a lot because it's easy to dose. There's a graduated dropper so you can see how much.
Mm-hmm.
You know exactly what you're going to get. It also doesn't hit you as hard as an edible.
Yeah.
because You take it sublingually, so you drop it under the tongue.
Okay.
It enters into the bloodstream that way. Obviously, you swallow it as well. So some of the cannabinoids do go into your system, but it actually bypasses the liver and goes straight into the stomach. So you get a nicer, easier high versus something where you've attached it to like a fat, like a butter. Which is why when people have eaten a brownie and then they're
Which
like,
is
"What
why this
happened?"
is like in the wellness space, I feel, because
Right.
yeah, you don't have to mix it with anything that even the gummies. I mean, sometimes some of the ingredients in a gummy aren't necessarily like good for you, but
Oh,
you're still
yeah.
going to do it,
I know.
So that is really cool. It feels very like,
It's an entry. A lot of people say it's a great entry level because people
Mm-hmm.
are nervous the first time they go into a store and they've never.
so that's where you buy them. I asked
They're
that
like,
earlier.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah. And so people tend to like that. It's just more controllable. Although all different forms are great, I think.
Yeah.
And to be honest, we have a sister company or sister brand, High Gorgeous, that does topicals, and that's way more focused on pain relief. You don't get high from a topical. Now you can get high transdermally, but it takes a lot.
Yeah.
I figured out that the hard way. One day I dipped my hands in like the oil that was left over, was playing with it, and I was like, okay, so you can't get high through your skin, but not through like how much we put in our lotion.
Yeah. 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 So when you say topical, it's like lotions or
Yeah. Topical
oils.
cooling roll-ons,
Mm.
like icy hot style.
Yeah.
That's really popular.
Love that.
We're introducing a new balm that we're coming out with. But the sky's the limit. So the industry's been very rocky, and the whole purpose of doing tincture was to make sure that we could get our foot in the door in all the stores with a product that was less competitive. We don't have that many competitors making tincture. Surprisingly, a lot of people tried to in the last couple of years, and they failed.
Which
It's
you're
not-
like,
because you got to sell, a lot.
yeah.
And so unless you're in the top 3 or 5, you're not really going to make money. So myself and a few other competitors, we make up most of the market now.
Amazing.
So now that we've done that and we've established ourselves with our buyers, we can go back and now introduce some of the products that we'd like to go back into.
Right.
Because we have that connection with them now. So it was never that we weren't going to do it. It was just, how do we survive a really rocky time, keep our expenses low, be one of the best in our field. And so that's why we got very direct in what we did. And now, sky's the limit. And we don't have debt like everyone else. So
Amazing. That is
really-
something to be proud of for
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, it's unfortunate for a lot of brands that have gone under in the last couple years. There's been some great ones. But we knew that was going to happen. Our father was a car dealer, and we learned that lesson in 2008 that if you weren't hunkered down and run lean,
Right.
you've got to be prepared. And so that would be a bit of advice I'd tell anyone is when you're flying high and the money's coming in, save some.
Save some. That's such a responsible answer.
And coming from someone like myself,
Yeah.
I had to learn that my sister was saying that. And I
Yes.
was like, no, we need to throw this $50,000 party
Yeah.
in Vegas. And we
Which
did not.
is so hard, right? Because as an entrepreneur and growing your business, it does take risk to get the reward. So how
Right.
do you assess that risk? Do I throw the $50,000 party to XYZ or do I not? You know,
Right.
so it's important to have that person that kind of checks and balances you.
Right.
That's Marcy for me. I give her, she wants to kill me half the time.
And then I
I'm
can
like,
be
no, we're doing it. And then
Yeah.
she's like, no, we're not. You
yeah,
can't
we really, I really have to look at like ROI now. Does it
Yes.
really? Is there
Yeah.
a return? And what we've learned is no.
Mm-hmm.
So
But I do think there is something to be said about like kind of niching in a certain area because I feel like that applies to a lot of different industries, right? Like
right,
being really great at few things versus being the jack of all trades. Like there's something to be said about that in a lot of industries.
right,
So it sounds like you kind of took that path to continue to grow and now you have the freedom and the opportunity to expand, right?
right. Well, and
Which is great.
actually, we just went through another phase of that with everything that was happening. The distributor that we originally went with, you know, they had private equity come in, and then they ended up going public and got pushed out of their own company.
Oh man.
We were still on their
See,
truck,
and that
and that's why I said we watched it fall apart from within. Not for them, but they wouldn't listen. Like these execs came in, and we're like, "No, we'll just pay you to stay at home." And she is one of the brightest minds I think in our industry. And we were like, "This is not going to go well," because they were more worried about having control, and they didn't know what they were really doing. So that's what triggered us to start to build out our own distro.
Yeah, smart.
So we opened that and did it ourselves for about with a partner to actually do the trucks part, but packed the orders and did everything for about the
Amazing.
last year and a half. But it was exhausting. It took us away from our core focus. We realized that we weren't being creative. We weren't rolling out new products. You know, we were kind of just trying to stay afloat in
yeah.
multiple too many core processes, you know? And so this is where it comes real full circle, even I get the chills, is so that company actually went bust, the public one. Wow. And the building that they had taken over, they let it go. And they went in, her and her husband went back and got the building back at a much cheaper rate too.
Oh,
because
good.
Now the
Thank God.
industry's
Yeah.
and restarted up their company privately. And we just re-signed with them at the beginning of this year. And so we're all back together.
The
working
band's back together.
again.
Wow.
She's releasing like all of her products that she used to manufacture. And we've already seen growth in the last like 40 days. And it's just crazy because her salespeople, I mean, we've known them for 10 years.
Yes.
And
So
it's
gosh,
really
she probably
come full circle.
has a lot to say about just the process and
if I can ever
relinquishing
get her-
control.
yeah. Come
Right?
she's not
Yeah.
from here, but
Yeah. That's okay. That's
the
awesome.
best part is that we were able to relinquish sales and AR. Let me tell you, AR is something
the
I never want to
fun
do again.
stuff
Yeah, to get
about-
paid. And like the packing of the orders and delivery and the logistics. So we've finally been able to turn back and look at just manufacturing and what we do well. So now we're very
amazing.
excited for the future and all the things that my sister's like a little nerd, but she's here for it. Yeah. I just have
I think
to,
that's natural, right?
yeah, I just
With the
have to
growth.
actually have a budget and a plan.
Yeah.
this ti-
Minor
this time around.
detail.
Yeah.
So what does the future look like so you have Yummy Karma, Hi Gorgeous, and you mentioned when we kind of briefly talked before, they're kind of eventually going to be all under one company, right?
Yeah. So we are putting them under a parent company,
Okay.
Magical Duo,
Love it.
because I know it works because
The
there's two
names,
of
I
us,
love
two
them.
brands.
Yeah, love it.
What we've realized, and this was something also I learned, is Yummy Karma is a brand. Hi Gorgeous is a brand. Because Yummy Karma has always been the dominant one, like that was our emails and that's what people refer to us.
Yeah.
But then we'd be like, oh, but we have this other brand. And we had to take a step back and realize, okay, wait, Yummy Karma is not the company. Like we need to separate ourselves. As a company, we're a manufacturer of wellness products. This should have its own, like this is what our company culture, I think what makes us great, the people and the values that we believe in. separately are these two brands that this company produces.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've had to kind of go backwards and
But you
try
know
to
what?
organize
Yeah.
it out a little bit so
Mm-hmm.
that it makes sense. And that was just like a branding thing, you know.
So I'm curious from a branding perspective. This is my world. Again, I love what you guys have done with the design and the website and the social and just the branding vibe for both of your brands. Why not do the High Gorgeous products under the Yummy Karma name? Why separate the two?
So
Is there I'm curious.
it's kind of, we did that at first.
You
For
did.
the longest time, it was High Gorgeous by Yummy Karma.
Mm-hmm.
But we're starting to see the potential of High Gorgeous to become something more than just topicals one day.
That's great.
People love the name.
Yeah, I
very
love the name. It's
Feminine.
Yes.
So we already, we're thinking about different products we'd want to release.
Mm-hmm.
And Yummy Karma has, for the last 7 years, only been tincture and is one
Oh
thing.
wow, amazing.
And so that's when we were like, maybe we should split because we can actually see High Gorgeous growing into a larger lifestyle brand.
Yeah,
Versus
love.
keeping Yummy Karma as, like we say, in your medicine cabinet.
Yeah, love it. It makes sense, and I figured there's a vision for it. So I
Yeah,
was
the
curious.
demographic's a little different too.
Yeah,
We
really?
definitely skew hardcore female for High Gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it's not all inclusive, but just the branding and
For
the
sure.
messaging's a bit
Yeah.
different.
Love it.
So
Love it.
yeah, now it's just going back and creating. It's hard sometimes, right? When you make changes, and then you have to go back and tell everyone else. Okay, now it's like
And
this.
now it's like
Yeah,
this. Yeah.
it's like this.
And you have a
So,
team. You said mainly female, which is cool.
Yes, there are 12 of us.
Mm-hmm.
We have one gentleman right
I
now.
love it.
We've had more. It just
Yeah.
happens. I think it's just
Yeah.
natural
Same. Yeah.
attraction, but we love
Uh-huh.
men, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I love it.
and he's our operations manager, and he does a great job. So.
Cool. Love it. So Magical Duo is going to be kind of the home for the two brands, essentially, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And what does the future look like? Like you mentioned potentially new products, like
I really wish I knew what that answer was.
Yeah.
Because going through these last 10 years, you would think we would know. But federal legalization, it's actually shocking that I'm sitting here 10 years later and it hasn't happened.
I know, right?
It's always promised, and we still don't have banking protection really. We do have a bank now. There's a lot of regulations though. You have to pay a
Gosh,
lot
you
more
gotta
for a
keep
bank
up with
account.
all of that. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And so it's really going to determine on what they do.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about rescheduling. I think they have, but until there's a framework, there's a lot up in the air. Now, luckily, we're in California. It's the largest market.
Is it?
Not always the most profitable one because of the problem, but yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, with so many people here,
Mm-hmm.
Michigan's, I think, sometimes sells more units sometimes, but I think we do more in revenue or whichever way. I can't really remember.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice when you have a company in California because it actually, you have to have a license here to produce and sell.
Yeah.
So if you don't have one, you have to have a partnership.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of control as California companies here. There's some people fear if it opens up to all the states, then it becomes very easy for somebody in another state that it costs a lot less to start selling.
Yeah.
And now we're prepared. So this next time that it happens, if we want to survive this next wave, we know what's going to happen, right? Investor money is going to pour in. A lot of people are going to enter the market again. It will become saturated. It will be very hard to make money. There will be new
Interesting.
regulations to have to handle. So that's something we talk about a lot is we want to be prepared either way. Either to stay and own it and maybe be 80, 90 years old one day and be like, we have our empire. Or package it and make sure that it's ready to be sold. Because
Yeah.
what we learned in this last time is if you aren't prepared for that, you can get taken advantage of, but also people aren't just buying the product. You need to be able to sell the processes and the playbook. So that's what my team and I have been working on is just to be prepared for, and my sister will love the part where it's like also be prepared to have money saved up.
Right. No, it's smart. And you guys have obviously have each other. You've lived and learned, and it sounds like you have a really great team. And you're clearly really passionate about it. I feel like that goes without saying. Sometimes the passion that somebody has for their company, like you do, is what sustains it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like not, sort of easily giving up control to somebody or considering a partnership or a buyout. Like those
Right.
things are obviously pivotal in a business. And so I feel like your passion's very clear. Like I'm not letting go of this thing.
I know. Well, I mean,
I mean,
if
in the
someone
best
offered me
way.
a lot of money,
Yeah.
I would let go. And it's just been really rewarding to celebrate all the wins.
I bet.
So even when an employee can buy their first house or get a car or,
I know,
just
right? I get
a
that.
lot of them have been with us for more than 4 or 5 years. And there's something special, I think, about that. And entrepreneurship, we want to be able to turn around and give back. So
I agree. Do you have interns? How does that work in your industry? I don't know.
It's so the woman who distributes our product, she did some internship, but it was kind of difficult because it's still not federally legal.
Yeah, I would
Certain
think
things,
so.
They're hesitant, but we do try to. I've spoke at the Fresno State business program sometimes.
Great.
And some of the students have come out and actually toured the facility.
Oh, amazing.
Spent hours on the phone or doing calls with young entrepreneurs. And they're like, well, like, this is what I want to do. And my first advice is like, don't do it. No, just kidding. But to be prepared.
Why am I hearing that often? I just had another guest too that's like, I said, what advice do you have for somebody that wants to get into your industry? And he's like, don't do it. I'm like, okay.
I would say now do it. It was 5 years ago, I'd be like, oh, don't do it now. The timing isn't right. But I think, like you said, people have to be prepared because it can be disheartening. The last couple of years, the last 2 years, especially last year, was we referred to it as a dumpster fire.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, when you have so many businesses failing and brands finally failing because investor money ran out, it pulls the whole industry down with it, right?
Interesting.
So all of our retailers that are on terms, when half of them can't pay, it really gets, it kept us up at night.
I'm sure. Well, then you have your sleep tincture now.
Yeah, I know, right? Drinking it by the bottle.
So, what would you say to somebody that has never has never smoked weed, feels like they're like scared of anything cannabis related? Like what would you say to like make it more approachable to them?
I would definitely try to find other people that you know already use.
Okay.
So that you can kind of ask questions.
Yeah.
Find a retailer with a great staff who can walk you through different products. If you walk in somewhere and they're just trying to push product on you, go somewhere else.
That's a good point.
There's great staff out there now that will walk you through different products, how to use it. They'll even like track what you're buying so that when you come back, you can talk about your experience with the product. Some people keep a journal actually just to say like, oh, I took this much and I freaked out,
Yeah.
Like last night, I'm not going to lie, I haven't had anything in a long time and I ate a half a gummy. It was too much. And I was like laughing and then freaking out. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I have the interview tomorrow. And I'm not a often user, but this is technically a vacation right now.
Yes.
Coming into town.
Yes.
So I get it.
Oh my God.
Know that it will pass.
Yes.
Start slow, small. You can always take more.
Yeah. That's good. That's good advice.
And do it. So
I love it.
Don't eat the whole brownie.
Or take a whole dropper.
Take a whole dropper.
Yeah.
Marcy, I know, was just saying that one of our friends' husbands apparently took a whole dropper full out.
Oh, no.
To another universe. But we're always available. We have a phone number on our website. We actually answer the phone. We help people, or you can email us, and we walk people through.
Yeah, so we have your website. Let's do all the socials and website, yummikarma.com.
Yes.
Okay.
And, because I did this 10 years ago, I thought it was cute to put an I instead.
I love it.
Yummi.
Yeah, which I love.
Well, we get called Yummi a lot. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Funny. Huh.
So yummikarma.com.
Yeah.
And then we also have Hi Gorgeous, and it's HIGH.
Which I love.
So.
Genius.
Same
Genius. Socials and stuff.
Social, yeah, and they connect to each other. So if you're on one website, you can find the other. If you're on one social, you can find the other.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming. This was really fun.
I
learned a lot.
This was nice to get out of the facility.
I bet.
Put on some clothes.
Put on some real clothes and make your way. What?
I tend
up
to live in
Fresno.
leggings and tennis shoes. So, Yeah.
Thanks, Krystal. This is awesome. Appreciate you
Very
coming.
much.
Cheers.
Yeah. Cheers.
Thanks for listening. Feel free to rate and review this episode here and connect with us on Instagram if you have any thoughts, questions, or any guest suggestions. Thanks.